CPDC, the story of CPDC has actually gotten a lot of great press recently because of some high profile transactions that have taken place. Many of you know that in 2008, it was started by John Valiant. We're very lucky to have had him involved in this program from the very beginning. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that without the OICR, CPDC would not have been even created. CPDC was, in fact, funded out of a Center of Excellence grant. And with those Center of Excellence grants, you didn't need a not-for-profit institution to be kind of your sponsor and sign the papers with you. And OICR stepped up and did that. John Sutherland, in his role at the time as the head of commercialization at OICR, and Tom Hudson were very integral to getting this off the ground. So actually the CPDC, if it wasn't for the OICR's involvement and collaborative efforts in this, I definitely wouldn't be standing here today, and we would have had a very different set of companies located right now down in Hamilton. We are, as many of you know, focused on the discovery, development, and clinical translation, and most importantly, commercialization. It's right in our name of radiopharmaceuticals. And this is something we've been focused on here in Ontario, but we've been very involved right across Canada. And it's important for us to have that national focus. So some of our high profile, we always put up the ones that everyone has heard of. Success is something you like to wave around, but this is biotech, and there have been some small companies that no one has ever heard of. I've joined 2 years ago. I've been going through many documents, and I've been wandering around. Hey, what's this company's name? Oh, that was a company we thought of starting up and disappeared. But that's the nature of biotech. That's the nature of collaborating with people. That's the nature of working with people. You take good ideas, we try and make them work, we try and push them forward. For many reasons, these do not succeed. Sometimes the perfectly good science everyone thought, initially, everything looked great, the biology looked great, the chemicals looked great, and the rats all died. Okay, so, we just couldn't get to the point where it works. These things happen. We're very lucky to have four in what, 16 years? So one every 4 years. So I got 2 more years to come up with a successful company. We had a great collaboration with UHN that helped initially start everything up. That was our Probe collaboration, where it was focused on getting and producing GMP quality probes for diagnostics. That program continued from 2008 right till last year. And Julia who's here and was integral to making that run in the last several years. Artemis is a company out of Vancouver, which makes gallium solid target generators, the gallium 68 isotopes. And that was just recently sold to Telix for about 100 million US. Fusion, I'm sure no one here's heard of it. We've tried to wave the flag on this for the last little while. But this is basically the culmination of what John Valiant and the people who started up CBDC and the people at OICR who helped start it up demonstrate that this technology can have great therapeutic uses, and that the rest of the world will understand that there is commercial viability for this. Fusion was just sold recently for 2.4 billion US, 2.1 up front, $300 million tail end. There was a time when we would all die just for the tail end of $300 million. It's been a great transaction. Facet was an early investor in this, and so our relationship with OICR continued out through there. Atom V, which is the manufacturing arm after we spun out in Fusion in 2014. We've began focusing more on clinical manufacturing and in-house rather, and so that became Atom V. That was spun out almost exactly 2 years ago. They raised 90 million Canadian at that closing. That dollar figure is it's not much higher, but it is higher now. They're building a large facility out by the Hamilton Airport to become an international player in this space. And You know, they didn't plan to, I'm not saying anything out of school. They didn't plan to expand their operations until they actually got in there, but they've actually had so much demand that they're expanding their operations before they're even in their operations. There's so much demand for what they have going on here. So those are the high profile projects that we've had going on that, you know, I think maybe you've heard of. And as always, I deny any failures whatsoever and go from there. But then this is biotech. It's a tough business. The proceeds from these sales, et cetera, they have funded our ongoing research investments in Ontario and across Canada. So with the spin out of Atom V and the manufacturing arm, we have refocused our R&D and clinical work here in Ontario with a great deal of OICR support. And I want to talk about what we're doing with OICR in Ontario, et cetera, and across Canada. So we've been well capitalized ourselves, but also being able to support and leverage and work with OICR and other grants. We have one translational research project ongoing right now, and that's for a tracer, for an oncology tracer. A year ago, actually, Neil Vazdev just saw it came in here. We worked with Neil Vazdev's group at CAMH on an asset that actually came out of a project that was going on at OICR on is it still called ACVR1 or have I now got to call it something else? Which protein? Should we go with L2? Because I keep flipping back and forth between those again, but we'll call it the L2. Sorry. Anyways, I know the disease name has changed as well. So, anyways, we worked on that project a year ago. That I think has been very successful for Neil and his team, which has been great. One of the big things we have, and we've been supported for the last 3 years, 4 years from OICR, is on our PSMA 1007. It's a PET tracer for prostate cancer. It's completed its dosing for a phase 3 trial. Hopefully at this time tomorrow, I'll be signing a data lock document that we've locked the data for that. We have a Health Canada meeting December 2nd, and we will be hopefully registering this late 2025, early 2026. We have ongoing research clinical trials with this asset, and I'll talk about those a little bit more in just a second. One of the things we do a lot with OICR support, and it was mentioned early on, I think by Lincoln, is we do a lot of regulatory support for tracers here in Ontario. PIs approach us to help fill out their CTAs, ongoing regulatory filings, et cetera. We've just completed 2 in the last quarter. The total is actually about 68 programs in Ontario over the last 5 years that we have supported where people have come by, approach us. We either have the template of the CTA, comment on their current CTA, comment on their protocol, complete the filings with Health Canada, do ongoing updates with Health Canada. So this is something that without OICR support would not be happening in Ontario. And that's something that we continue to go forward with. Another thing, as I mentioned earlier, we have done a lot of work on the manufacturing side, be it with our colleagues at UHN at CamProbe, be it with Atom V, be it et cetera. We have knowledge on GMP manufacturing for radiopharmaceuticals. We've retained that knowledge. We've retained several terabytes, it feels like, of SOPs, which we are more than happy to share with people. We are actually actively working with various manufacturing sites across Canada and in Ontario to help them come up to speed so that they can do clinical trials across Canada. Something very unique in Probe, obviously with diagnostics. Most of the diagnostics are either done with gallium or with fluorine. These are very short half-life isotopes, and they're manufactured in non-manufacturing facilities. Most of in the last 20 years or so, where we've put down cyclotrons to make fluorine-18, have been in hospitals and in universities. These are not ideal locations for running a GMP facility. People across Ontario, across Canada, and we're going to pat ourselves on the back, have gotten quite good at figuring out how to make GMP facilities inside a university or inside a hospital, and how to make them work, and how to help train people, and how to help keep those people there. We work with many sites across Canada. Yeah, this is integral. This is something I make this comment many times. You can get a politician to stand beside your cyclotron and take a picture, but the person, what they need to stand beside is the people who do the GMP manufacturing, because otherwise you just have a big hunk of metal that's sitting around and for research purposes. You have to turn these facilities and make sure you know on an ongoing basis how to manufacture to GMP specs. I'm going to say it out loud. Winnipeg just failed for the fifth time their Health Canada GMP manufacturing because the facility where it's done is an academic institution and they struggle with turning that into a GMP facility. And these are things across Canada problems have. And with the OIC support, we're helping actually make these available for patients, or else it would not happen. And that's something that people need to recognize. OICR has been behind the scenes for at least 5 years that I can see from the agreements that we've signed. But it's been there and it's failing. So this is I'm going to touch base on a slightly different topic. Lincoln was talking about the fact that we actually OICR and the AO program has been on trying to make tracers, trying to make diagnostics, but also on something else that's not talked about a lot or not projected enough is the data. So PET scans are a valuable resource. They're the property of the patient. Patients don't realize often that they have this valuable resource. We have been working with two other parties in Ontario who are also supported by OICR. This is a very collaborative project. Julia from QIPCM, I think I got that right. I always throw in an extra consonant just for good measure, see if anyone's paying attention. Has been very helpful on this. Brandon from Lawson, who's here today also, very helpful on the program. Also QIPCM, I thought, okay, there you go. Dr. Glenn Bauman, who is the PI on one of the big, several of the big, lead PI on several of the big prostate PET scan research clinical trials in Ontario, has a sizable database under his PrEP 2 and PrEP 3 trials. That data, he has volunteered to work with us and work with Dr. Catherine Zukatinsky, who also has worked with OICR for many, many years, to put together a database of anonymized, well-curated PET scans that we can use to train other medical doctors around Ontario and across Canada. So that when a doctor looks at a PET scan, you don't have one doctor seeing 3 lesions and another doctor seeing 10 lesions. We kind of have a testing basis for this is the gold standard of what we have. We will have more than one doctor, a clinician, technician, look at these scans, say how many lesions are there, and so people can say, this is what it is. This is not just for PSMA 107. There's 3 different diagnostics involved in the data set. When I presented this back in March to OICR, we were talking of 500 sets of data. We're now looking at just around 900 sets of data, and that's coming out of the clinical trials that have been led by Dr. Bauman. This is going to be a very, very interesting tool. We've given it the name Fulcrum. I know there are people in this room who don't like that name. Not the one at the mic, but it's my company, so I can go with what I want. I don't get many vetoes, but I like the name Fulcrum, so I'm going with it. So what is it? It's going to be, this is going to be an important asset for Ontario and Canada if we can utilize it correctly. Uniformly annotated, anonymized data set that can be shared to train both clinicians and AI algorithms. It's classic garbage in, garbage out. We want to have a clean data set that can be used for training algorithms so we can help clinicians. It's currently housed at Lawson. We have some hard decisions about where, how to store the data, support the data, where can it be moved to, how can it be moved to, should it be moved? As I've already said a couple of times, how is it going to be used? It's going to be used both for training clinicians and hopefully training AI algorithms. We've had a number of sites across Canada say they want to add their data to this database. They see the value to it. There are very reasonable privacy rules across Canada about moving this data. Uh, this is uh, uh, this is a new space. It's a new space in privacy issues. It's a new space in the legal framework. So we have a lot of work to do. But it's really exciting. And we're trying to build something that's scalable, useful, and that can be built upon in the future. So this is a program, it's collaborative with everyone involved in it is tangentially or directly related to programs that come out of OICR, and it wouldn't occur without all the backing from OICR. I just want to let some people know about some of the other things that we're doing at CPDC, and I'll make sure that I have everyone out of here in time for the 10 o'clock snack. One of the things that we are doing is we are working with groups across Canada to access PET imaging. Some of the people we've worked with, either Lawson and here at UHN, they've been partners in our own clinical trial. Alberta Health is also involved in a clinical trial. We've worked with them by making available our tracers. We're actually right now working with Eastern Health for St. John's to run a mock Health Canada audit for GMP. So we're going to fly 3 people up on our nickel to St. John's, and we're going to do a mock audit for them so that when Health Canada comes in early next year, they'll be prepared for it, and then they'll be able to get licensed, and patients will be able to get dosed. We've been working also with Fedoric in Saskatoon. We've worked there for several times. Where our goal is in early spring of next year to make fluorine-based PET tracers available for prostate cancers diagnosis in Saskatchewan. One that's not on here, we've just recently re-engaged with the University of Ottawa Heart Institute to similarly work with them to get GMP manufacturing up and running there as well. This is something that we plan to do on an ongoing basis. We're also heavily involved in a SIF, scientific, whatever, I don't know what SIF stands for. Someone else was struggling with what fast it was, right? Scientific Innovation Fund. I'm going to go with that. If someone can prove that it's not it, then come up and tell me later. But we started the Canadian Medical Isotope Ecosystem. It's co-led with our friends over at Triumph. And this is an innovation ecosystem to promote nuclear isotope use and in particularly medical isotope use here across Canada. Our particular focus has been on a development fund. We have, and I'll just flip over to the next slide. Sorry about that. I'll go. I'll talk about the development fund more during our virtual tour, but we have roughly $5 million, which we have been putting out to small Canadian companies to do key proof of concept experiments so that they can go to the next step of raising capital. It is a granting program. It is a matched funding program. We've just closed our second call. In our first call, we put out 5. We have 5 companies join. We look to do about the same in this next call. It should close and start funding in January of this year if everything goes well and all the documents get put in place. But it's an exciting program, and there's some really interesting work being done across Canada. And our goal here is to help these people start to commercialize this work, do those valley of death experiments that get you across so you can have a proof of concept and you can approach people for seed and Series A funding. So what we're really going to be focused on over the next year through our collaborations with OICR, with our work through CMIE, and what we like talking to people about is our role in future company creation. We have a history of doing this. We have hired people who are familiar with it, and our board has a bias towards understanding and being enthusiastic about how can we create companies. These companies can either start internally to CPDC, as much of our other companies have, or they can be collaborations with existing startup companies, or sometimes we take a technology that's in an institution and decide in conjunction with that institution to create a company, put the assets in it, and drive it forward from there and capitalize it with the goal of bringing in additional seed, Series A, or other investors. So we look to do about 1 to 3 a year. That's fairly. If we did 3 a year, I think I'd die of a heart attack within, after the first year. But we think it's more than reasonable to do 1 or 2 a year. Those are our goals. So, and we're open to any ideas that make sense, logical structures, etc. But it has to have the goal of eventually being another company created entity. So, just very quickly, currently across we have been very involved historically in radiopharmaceuticals. When we were manufacturing, we actually delivered as CPDC, not just and through and some through CanProbe over the last couple of years. We did 16 radiopharmaceutical probes to local research studies. We just closed as I mentioned earlier, our PSMA 1007 clinical trial, enrolled over 100 patients into that. That will be hopefully registered and available in early 2026 or late 2025. As I mentioned, we have working with our SIF grant and creation of the CMIE, and working with OICR. We have about almost $2 million of capital that we look to deploy in leveraging funds from granting institutions. And we are working with others to expand their radiodiagnostic manufacturing capabilities across Canada so that patients have access to these important diagnostics everywhere. So I think I'm pretty much right on line. Thank you very much.